Chapter 24, August 1987, New York. Part 2. John stood at the window, watching the magnolia petals drift in his front yard. The moon transformed the tree, shrubs, and garden into a fairy-like scene washed with silver. Shaking off the memories, he moved to the table to turn the lamp on, the quick illumination making him blink. His materials for tomorrow's session covered the table, forcing his thoughts back to the present. He was tired from the busy day. The Chinese delegation had asked so many questions, and although most of his answers were straightforward, he still felt the strain of trying to keep on top of their concerns. After clearing the table, he switched the lamp off again, letting the moonlight throw shadows across the living room. He sat on the sofa, listening to the familiar songs by Crosby and Sinatra, and tried not to think about his unexpected meeting with Zoe. But her soft voice and warm smile pushed aside everything else, sweeping him back to those days of joy when they were together. Even now he could feel the unbreakable bond between them, his heart thudding in his chest at the thought of her touch. She had been evasive at lunch today when he'd probed her about her past, including when he commented on her lilting American English. But maybe that was just because there were other people around. I have to find a way to talk with her privately. I must. During their morning break, most of the delegation members simply picked up a few snacks and went out into the courtyard for a little fresh air. Zoe stayed behind to make a cup of tea. She found the ritual relaxing, dipping the tea bag in the hot water, up and down, watching the liquid gradually turn a rich amber. As she poured a dollop of milk into the cup, a voice from behind her startled her. "I see you still like your tea Western style, with lots of milk." Zoe's hand shook, spilling a few drops of milk on the table. She wiped the table with a napkin and turned with an embarrassed smile. "Sorry for being so clumsy." "No, I'm the one that should apologize for picking the wrong time. I didn't mean to startle you." John eased her nervousness by pouring himself some coffee. He blew on the hot brew before attempting a sip, searching for the right words. "I was quite taken aback when I first saw you yesterday. You look like someone I knew 37 years ago, when I was at Berkeley in California. She was just as beautiful as you, and studying to be a nuclear scientist, like you." He paused, seeing nothing but her face. Zoe smiled and said, "Thank you," her eyes firmly on her tea. She went back to China in 1950 and disappeared. Then, years ago, I saw a photo of her with some other Chinese nuclear scientists, shaking hands with Chairman Mao to celebrate the success of China's first nuclear weapon test. I was shocked, because the woman I knew was full of compassion and kindness. We had signed a nuclear disarmament petition together. Obviously, either I didn't know the truth behind her beautiful face, or she had changed, become more interested in her career than in principles. I suppose people can change. She felt her heart hammering in her chest, despite his casual tone. Half of her desperately wanted to explain and defend her actions, while the other half was sending warning signals, telling her to keep away from him for her own good. She couldn't take risks involving herself with a foreigner again, particularly John, whose name was already documented as an American spy in her record kept by the party. So she only nodded silently. Then yesterday, I met her again, unexpectedly. Isn't it strange how even after so many decades, the memory of someone else lingers on? Now I feel foolish for having accused her of being an evil scientist who built weapons. I'm confused now about who she really is. John never took his eyes off her. She shrugged and failed miserably at a smile. I'm afraid I can't give you a satisfactory answer. People can change, just like you said. Sometimes changes are forced upon them. They have no choice but to mold to external pressures, or else they will die. Perhaps working for the UN isn't your first career choice either. She saw the hurt flash across his face, as sure and sharp as a knife, and immediately regretted her comment. Sorry, I didn't mean to criticize. You are right. Your friend should stick with what she believes. Maybe she isn't really evil, just not as tough as you, and maybe she gave up too easily. Her voice quivered as tears welled up in her eyes. To avoid his intense gaze, she walked across the room to a trash can and dropped the used tea bag in, taking the opportunity to discreetly blot her tears with a napkin. She swallowed her remaining tears with the last of the tea and put the cup back on the tray, ready to face John again. John stood silently, watching her defiance mellow into indifference. Had Zoe actually worked on nuclear weapons? If that was true, then why was she here now as part of a nuclear safety group? He felt ashamed of his harsh words and attack on her character. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have bothered you with my reminiscing. You're not bothering me, Zoe said, but I think I have disappointed you. Not at all. You see, this woman was my fiancée. I loved her very much, and we were going to marry. John stepped closer, his voice sinking into a whisper. But she never came back to America for the wedding. To this day, I wonder whether she was brainwashed, or if her sense of duty and patriotism changed her mind about me. If that's the case, he paused and took a shaky breath. I wish her all the best. Zoe didn't answer, staring blankly past John at the whiteboard. She felt him move closer, and she fought the urge to reach for him, to touch his face, to pour out the pain of her past and declare her everlasting love. However, footsteps and chatter broke through her trance and pulled her back to reality. She let out a small sigh and said quickly, keeping her voice calm and steady, I think perhaps your fiancée must have been in some kind of trouble. However, you have every right to blame her, because leaving you was surely a selfish decision. She forced a smile to her lips as her colleagues crowded back into the room. Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson, for explaining the new nuclear safeguard guidelines. Now I think this afternoon we're ready to show you our original design and go through the specifications section by section. I hope it's not too boring for you. John's eyes brightened. He was certain now that Zoe hadn't betrayed her fundamental morals. There was obviously some reason she couldn't tell him the exact difficulties she had faced. Even now, there was something holding her back. But it was enough just to know that she hadn't been brainwashed and seemed to regret her actions. He gave her a brisk bow and said, I will be delighted to assist you in any way, to the best of my ability. He made up his mind to visit the Secretary of the Department of Technical Cooperation as soon as the workshop concluded. He had to find out more about her mysterious past. What had really happened to her during all those missing years? Zoe sat on the bed, sorting through her notes from the day's session, enjoying the silence. The engineer who shared her room had gone next door to play cards after dinner. Shoving the papers aside, She laid back down with her eyes closed and relaxed for what felt like the first time in weeks. A whirlwind of memories flooded back through her mind, from their first meeting at the tennis court to the tender moment he had slid the engagement ring on her finger. She never doubted that he had loved her, a sentiment he had repeated today. The thought sent a comfortable warmth through her, down to her fingertips. For so long she had blamed herself for their separation and prayed for his happiness. Seeing him today with a wedding ring on his finger and enjoying his work at the UN, she felt both relief and joy that her prayers had been answered. People change. Lovers cease to love. A man could stop loving a woman and leave her, without a word, to love someone else. His warmth today could merely be curiosity. After all, she was the one who had broken off their engagement and unsettled his life. Why wouldn't he marry another woman? Why would he want to reconnect with me? I ruined his life once. I have no right to do it again. After the delegation finished its work there, she would return to China, and they would go back to living two separate lives again. What was the use in stirring up old memories, opening old wounds? Though as a member of the Communist Party, she did not believe in religion, she felt there must be some higher power bringing them together again. She prayed in the dark. Please, give me the strength to resist his attentions and not disrupt our work with useless emotions. The last day of the workshop was a mad scramble to finish the reviews and make sure all questions on both sides had been answered to everyone's satisfaction. The morning break and lunch were both cut short. Zoe was careful to keep her distance and not be caught alone with John. At 4:30 that afternoon, on top of the last-minute flurry, Minister Shin insisted on a group photo before they left for the airport. Zoe, you look pale. Not feeling well today? John called her by her English name as the group flocked out the door into the plaza. Zoe hesitated, but replied politely, "Call me Zuyi, please." She fluttered her hand dismissively. "Just a slight headache. It's nothing to worry about." "Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Zoe was my fiancée's name. You've brought back precious memories of her, and I'm wondering if she has those fond memories too. I don't think imagining what might have been or trying to recapture what is gone will ease anyone's guilt or pain. I'm sure your ex-fiancé believes you deserve all the happiness you have after what you went through. It's best just to preserve the memories as they are and not let them interfere with the present," Zoe said. She had wrapped herself in a shield of rigid inner strength, and her calm and grace flowed naturally through the words. She turned and went to stand at the far end of the group photo. Minister Shin waved forward, inviting him into the photo. John jumped in to stand just behind Zoe. "You'll need to close in towards the middle," the photographer called, and the group shuffled to fill in the gaps. Zoe could feel the warmth of John's body behind her and hear his breath stirring her hair. Her heart accelerated, beating progressively faster until she felt acutely dizzy, her knees starting to buckle. A strong hand caught her arm and held her up, John's hand. The strong, safe support that used to be hers. A blush flooded her face. The scent, the feel, the very thought of him took her breath away. She wanted to hold on to this moment, to feel this way for the rest of her life. She turned and stared up at him, longing to tell him how much she loved him, to beg him to hold her forever. John met her gaze as her head tilted back and her soft lips parted, ready for his kiss. Suddenly she was jostled by someone's elbow, and the call from the photographer shattered the moment. "Everybody, look at the camera!" Zoe turned her head back and drew a shaky breath, hoping no one else had seen her momentary lapse of control. With the photo taken, the group began gathering their bags to board the bus. Minister Shin came over to shake John's hand, and Zoe was kept busy translating everybody's hearty words of gratitude. Finally, as the last colleague turned toward the bus, Zoe put her hand out, ready to shake John's. Instead, he held it to his cheek and then turned it over and pressed a gentle kiss on her palm. His eyes locked on hers for what felt like an eternity, but was surely only seconds. With an effort, Zoe gently pulled her hand back and smiled at him. "Thank you for everything you've done for us. It has been my pleasure to meet you. These few days will be a precious memory in my life. Forever." He took the risk without hesitation. "As precious as your past memories?" "I treasure every minute of the happiness I was given, but no one can turn back time." "Then we shouldn't let happiness slip away when we find it again." She shook her head slowly. "Your ex-fiancée, I'm sure she tried." Her eyes glistened, and he heard the tremor in her voice. "I will make her happy again, if she'll let me," John said. He stroked her hand, aware that she wore no rings. So he glanced toward the bus. Her colleagues were all aboard, waiting for her. Her fingertips slid across the wedding band on his finger, and she forced a sad smile. "Please don't destroy what happiness you have now. She will be happy, so long as you're happy." "Can I come to Shanghai to visit you?" he begged. For another few seconds, they looked deep into each other's eyes. "Please, don't." She dropped her gaze. "Goodbye, and good luck." She turned and slowly walked toward the bus.